watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Tomorrow you have to stand up and tell Kamala that you've had enough. You can't take anymore.
In one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime, and we have momentum. It is on our side. Can you feel it?
Final push, Harris and Trump campaign to the last minute with Election Day just hours away. Both candidates' last plea for your vote.
The fact that we woke up is a miracle.
Powerful tornadoes leaving communities in shreds in the Heartland. Millions on high alert again tonight from the southern plains to the Ozarks. Plus, violence in the stands. The viral video of officers appearing to punch fans at a football game.
The presidential election does have an impact on what the Fed's going to do going forward on a couple of fronts.
The Fed continues to adjust its interest rates as inflation cools. The impact the presidential election may have on rate cuts in the future. Plus, gas prices continue falling nationwide, why analysts are calling this trend a gift to the next president, no matter who wins. Live from the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Diddy Gatton. On this election's eve, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are making their closing pitches as the deadlocked race comes to a head tomorrow. Our team coverage begins now. Matt Gelka joins us with a group of voters each candidate is keeping a very close eye on. But first, we go to Ryan Smith at the live desk with how these candidates, Ryan, have spent their final hours on the trail.
Well, DD, it certainly all comes down to this right here tonight, doesn't it? Both candidates giving those closing arguments tonight. One of the most historically significant elections will come to an end in a matter of hours now. Former President Donald Trump, we see him here live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at this hour tonight. Now, so far, he's touched on several of his key campaign issues like inflation, immigration, and sweeping nationwide crime. Here he is just moments ago in that pivotal swing state.
With your vote in this election, you can show them once and for all that this nation does not belong to them. This nation belongs to you.
And at this hour tonight, we're also waiting right now to hear directly from Vice President Kamala Harris. She's hosting her own rally just around the corner, really, just miles away from Trump, also in Pittsburgh. She's been crisscrossing the Keystone State all day long, promoting a message of unity.
I am not going to be a leader who thinks that people who disagree with me should be put in jail, that they are the enemy. I'll give them a seat at the table because that's what real leaders do.
And it is far from over tonight. It will be a late night tonight on this election eve. She concludes with a star-studded concert and rally in Philadelphia. Trump, meantime, will head to Michigan next for his final event of the night in Grand Rapids.
And it all comes down to Election Day in a presidential race that pollsters say is the closest ever surveyed. As national correspondent Matt Gelka tells us, experts say turnout, specifically which groups turn out, could decide what happens Tuesday.
More than 75 million people have already voted heading into Election Day. It's less than 2020 when the COVID pandemic altered how many voted, but the numbers are significantly higher than non-pandemic elections. Part of it could be due to an about-face from former President Donald Trump.
So the polls are open for early voting in Georgia every day from now till November 1st. You got to get out there and vote, but most importantly, just vote. Whichever way you want to do it.
Trump had previously told supporters not to trust early voting and vote by mail. But now Republicans are outpacing Democrats in some key swing states, including Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada, and Arizona. Georgia has already amassed nearly 80% of their 2020 voting total through early voting this year. And in North Carolina, they've shattered records. Almost 4.5 million people voted early, despite the state still dealing with devastating damage from Hurricane Helene. The campaigns are trying to be optimistic about certain demographics breaking their way.
In one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime, and we have momentum. It is on our side. Can you feel it?
Harris is dominating Trump with women voters, while Trump has an even bigger lead with male voters, according to some surveys. Both candidates are hoping to shore up Latino votes as well. A Trump-supporting comedian's comments about Puerto Rico and garbage led to an all-out effort from Harris to try and capitalize.
No somos basura, somos más.
While Trump hopes to maintain gains he's made with Hispanic voters.
I've done more for Puerto Rico than any president by far, nobody close.
It's nearly impossible for pollsters to figure out who's in the lead.
And in a very close race, small changes in turnout can have a huge impact.
And both campaigns will be watching turnout very closely come election night. For the National News Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelker.
And new tonight, a Pennsylvania judge rules Elon Musk's $1 million a day pledge signing sweepstakes may proceed. The decision comes after a surprising courtroom revelation. The winners were not picked at random, as Musk claimed. They were actually paid spokespeople for Musk's political action committee. Philadelphia's district attorney says the whole thing is an illegal scam to get voters to surrender their information. He wanted it shut down, and he hasn't ruled out bringing criminal charges. Taking a live look over Washington, D.C., where metal security fences are going up in preparation for Election Day tomorrow. Federal and district police officers are bracing for possible unrest in the nation's capital following the presidential elections. You get a sense of the preparations right here. The Secret Service has put up those 8-foot-high fences around the White House, the Treasury Department, U.S. Capitol, and Vice President Kamala Harris's home. Officials say there are no threats to D.C. right now. Don't miss our special election coverage tomorrow, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are covering all the big races, including in swing states like Georgia, as well as hot button issues that matter to you on air and online at thenationaldesk.com.
Well, tonight, severe weather is slamming several states across the country, from Texas all the way up to Missouri. Millions of people now under a threat of tornadoes, damaging winds, as well as some heavy rains out there. Let's take you out live to Texarkana, Texas tonight, where a tornado watch is impacting a large region here. It includes parts of Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Texas until midnight Central Time. Dozens of tornadoes tearing through the state of Oklahoma over the weekend here, injuring at least a dozen people and damaging more than 200 buildings. As you see here, trees came crashing into homes, cars flipped over, and power lines out there just littering those streets.
The fact that we woke up is a miracle. Every single thing is replaceable, but the people aren't. And so for us to walk away with absolutely no injuries, no issues at all, that to me means way more than whether or not I have a couch or a roof.
And looking ahead to tomorrow, Election Day, of course, severe storms with flood warnings remain a pretty serious threat out there in battleground states like Wisconsin as well as Michigan.
Israel has severed its ties with the United Nations Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Today, Israel's government told the UN it was terminating its 1967 agreement to work with UNRWA. This move comes after Israel's parliament passed a law to block UNRWA's activities in Israel. UNRWA is one of the key distributors of aid to Gaza. The U.S. has told Israel it must increase aid flow or it could risk losing weapons funding.
We've been quite clear with Israel that we believe they have an obligation to get humanitarian assistance in. Ultimately, what we want to do is see the war end, and that's what we're trying to bring about.
19 UNRWA staff members were alleged to be involved in the October 7th terror attacks inside Israel. Their contracts were terminated after an investigation. 9 were determined to have possibly been involved. New details now. More than 3,000 people in Lebanon have died due to ongoing fighting between Israel and the Hezbollah militant group. Hezbollah began firing rockets into northern Israel a day after Hamas's October 7th attack. Israel has launched airstrikes in response, and it began a ground invasion of Lebanon last month. About 72 people have been killed in Israel from Hezbollah attacks since the fighting began. The jury reached a verdict in the murder trial of a former Columbus, Ohio police officer who shot and killed an unarmed black man. Adam Coy was found guilty on all charges for the 2020 deadly shooting of Andre Hill. Coy said it was only after he fired 4 times that he realized Hill didn't have a gun. The city of Columbus later agreed to pay a $10 million settlement to Hill's family. Coy's sentencing is set for November 25th. Federal agents disrupted a major attack on the power grid in Nashville over the weekend. They arrested 24-year-old Skylar Philippi on Saturday. He's charged with attempting to use a weapon of mass destruction and attempting to destroy an energy facility. The FBI says he was driven by white supremacist ideology. Philippi was in the process of attaching explosives to a drone when he was taken into custody. He could face life in prison if convicted. Financial expert Dave Ramsey recently said that regardless of who wins the presidential election, it won't have that much of an impact on your personal finances. Emma Withrow joins us from the Fact Check team to discuss. So the economy has been the issue, the top issue for many voters this entire election cycle. Is there any data out there that shows, how many Americans are actually voting for Trump or Harris solely on this economic factor?
Absolutely, yeah. So Banking Rate, they put together a survey that found a quarter of those voters who participated were voting for either Harris or Trump, just based entirely on who they think will be better for their personal financial situation. And then another 42% of them said that their finances are at least a factor in their decision.
Yeah, so kind of disconcerting to hear the impact or lack of impact according to this expert. Trump and Harris also, they both support a bigger child tax credit. But other than that, give us a breakdown of the key differences in their plans.
Absolutely. I dug into both plans today, and Trump's plan focuses on revitalizing U.S. manufacturing, really. They want to lower the corporate tax rate to 15% for companies who produce here in America. They also want to put tariffs on imported goods and taxes on those imported goods. They also want to create manufacturing zones with reduced taxes and regulations. As for Harris's plan, she prioritizes small businesses by wanting to give them a $50,000 tax cut. She also wants to lower grocery and prescription drug prices by instituting a national price gouging ban.
All right, Emma, thank you. We're down to the wire, almost there. Later on, Emma will be back to break down what financial experts are saying about these plans and the tangible impact they could have on Americans' finances.
Chaos erupting at a rivalry college football game. Florida police here caught on camera repeatedly punching rowdy fans in the stands. We'll show you the full video next.
But first, taking a live look over WZTV from our station in Nashville. They are part of our network of 4,000 local journalists. Tennessee has set a new early voting record with over 2 million people casting their ballot ahead of Election Day. Officials say the turnout represented close to 46% of eligible voters. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
A violent college football clash, this one though happening off the field in Jacksonville. Wild body cam video here from Jacksonville police showing officers punching fans at the annual Florida-Georgia football game on Saturday. The Jacksonville Sheriff's Office says a fan pushed an employee over a dispute about seat tickets there. One fan then reportedly used racial slurs, and they say he could be heard threatening violence.
Remember I told you I'm either going to kill a cop or not leave. I better get. I'm going to beat your You're gonna Bill, DJ Ballot. Dude, you're not gonna do that. I promise. I will do that.
Now, in a completely different incident here, officers were trying to eject 3 fans due to their violent behavior, but the fans then refused to leave. The sheriff there in Jacksonville saying today those officers did act within reason.
In those cases, in both of those situations, we were summoned to that area. We weren't looking for it. I'm telling you, I can promise you this, police officers don't go looking for a fight.
And officials today saying the administrative review here of that violence is complete and all officers involved will not be punished.
Regardless of who wins the presidential election later on this week, the Fed is set to cut interest rates for the second time this year. Back in September, rates were cut half a point. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, joining us. Jeff, kind of in the back of people's minds, but very important still with the election going on. While the race for the White House won't impact this rate cut this week, that might not be the case for future cuts. Tell us more about these potential changes.
Right now, Didi, the Fed normally operates independently when it comes to rate cut decisions, but depending on who wins the presidency, that independence could change. Economists say on Thursday the Fed will likely cut interest rates by a quarter point down to about 4.6%. The Fed often cuts rates to boost the economy, but this time Chair Jerome Powell says the central bank is lowering rates as part of a recalibration to a lower inflation environment. And while experts say this cut won't be impacted by the presidential election, future ones could be.
The Fed's independence is incredibly important for making sure that inflation stays well anchored. And that is an area of some concern, particularly from the Trump camp, having threatened the independence of the Fed and suggested that he might want more control of the Fed.
As for Vice President Harris and her camp, Sinclair says at this point there is no indication they will interfere with the Fed. But looking ahead, economists are predicting another quarter point rate cut that will be made sometime next month in December, and then possibly additional cuts that would be coming next year.
U.S. auto safety regulators have closed a 2.5-year investigation into Ford engine failures related to faulty intake valves. The probe covered more than 411,000 vehicles from the 2021 and 2022 model years. NHTSA says the faulty valves were made from May through October of 2021. Ford recalled about 91,000 vehicles with valves made during that time to be tested and given a new engine if necessary.
Gas prices on the decline right now, really pretty much across the country. Why this downward trend is expected to stick around no matter how tomorrow the election day shakes out. Gas prices now dropping for 3 straight weeks now. The average now here at $3.05 a gallon. Diesel now hovering around $3.52 a gallon on average. That according to Gas Buddy. And Gas Buddy now tracking more than 24 states where the average price fell below the $3 mark. And in the coming weeks, we could see it drop to below prices not seen since 2021. With Election Day tomorrow, just a few hours away, check out these average gas prices in some of those key swing states. 5 states are seeing a downward trend. Georgia, North Carolina, and Wisconsin all falling below $3. Patrick Tejada, gas buddy, now saying today, quote, gasoline prices are likely to be a gift to the next president, staying much closer than in previous years, no matter who wins the election.
For weeks, experts in polling data have had the presidential race in a virtual tie. Both campaigns are wrapping up with stops in major battleground states, but there are a lot of unknowns for both candidates as we head into Election Day. Joining us now to discuss is our political insider, Armstrong Williams. Thank you for joining us on this election eve, Armstrong.
My pleasure.
At this point, more than 78 million people, nearly 80 million people have cast their ballots early. And data suggests that Republicans are more willing to cast their ballots early. That's obviously a new trend. Do you think we're going to see a surge in Republican voters come tomorrow, or, given this data, or are there just people who would have voted on Election Day and are now voting early?
Well, the Democrats have always shown in the past that they are far better than getting their ground troops out on Election Day. It is fascinating because the weather would play a factor. Unlike past presidential elections, the weather being pretty nice across the United States is going to be a factor. The interesting thing about people overwhelmingly that are voting for Kamala Harris, they're not necessarily voting for her because she has a clear message. They're voting for her because she's not Donald Trump. Voters voting for Donald Trump knows exactly what they're getting. No matter how much he gets foot and mouth disease, they know what he's done in his previous time as president of the United States, whether it's on the border for the economy, and we did not have the foreign wars. One of the things that Vice President Harris is doing in the final days, she's not mentioning Donald Trump at all, because what she's trying to do is stay on message, because her advisors have told her point blank, when she stays on message, try to talk about the economy, talk about unifying the country, she seems to get a better attraction from those undecided voters who are still on the fence.
Yeah, on that point, in the final hours, today, looking at the past of the weekend, what do you make of each candidate's campaigning approach and strategy? Because they were very different.
Well, they're different, but listen, the key is Pennsylvania and North Carolina are very key in this election. And we should not underestimate the presence that Elon Musk has had in Pennsylvania, particularly with the judge ruling in his favor that he can continue what he's doing. And while the vice president's ground game is excellent in Pennsylvania, we just don't know how it's being offset by Elon Musk taking up residency in Pennsylvania for the last several weeks.
Armstrong, before I let you go, one quick last question. This race has been said to be a statistical tie. When you wake up tomorrow morning, what are you watching for?
Listen, Donald Trump has done better than he's done in any of his presidential election cycles. In each of the battleground states, he's winning by small percentages, no matter what the pollsters may say. If it breaks the way it's going to break, if he's able to do well in Nevada, if he's able to do well in Georgia and North Carolina, and I think he'll win Pennsylvania, I think we should know who the next president is no later than 11 p.m. on Tuesday night. Harris, if she can get women out to vote, if she can get some men to say, well, maybe I won't vote for Trump because of his character, morality. I'm voting for somebody who's more unified and who's decent. Maybe if she can get enough of those voters to cross over and not vote for Donald Trump, then she has a pathway to victory.
All right, we'll be seeing a lot of each other come tomorrow. Armstrong Williams, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes.
It is likely the last place you'd expect your family's personal information to get swiped. What cyber experts say parents should do now to protect their financial future. Your child's school is now 2.5 times more likely to be targeted by cyber criminals than any other part of the economy. Experts now say the reason why is simple. Your kids are an easy target.
You also have a perfectly clean, personal history or identity in general. This could be used for nefarious financial reasons, maybe opening up loans, lines of credit, etc., because no one's watching. Not a lot of people monitor the credit of their children.
Checkpoint now estimates that every day here in the U.S., there are more than 550 cyber attacks on schools, largely in places like port regions, military bases, and the D.C. area, with their goals set on higher value targets, starting with employees in the seat of government. Through this method, hackers gaining everything from private communication between parents and teachers to medical records even, home addresses, and social security numbers. Experts now say one of the best things here parents can do is to freeze their child's credit and monitor it at least once or twice a year.
Lawyers for Sean Diddy Combs are asking a judge to place a gag order on potential witnesses and their attorneys. They argue any public statements about the case could undermine his right to a fair trial. The move comes after media reports about a witness who said he has videos that contain footage of celebrities potentially being victimized by Combs. In the defense team's request to the federal judge overseeing Combs' sex trafficking trial, they called the witnesses' claims false and say the statements create the impression that such videos exist. Coming up on the National News Desk, ensuring secure elections from coast to coast. The new measures some states are taking to protect your vote. Plus, Boeing union workers voting again on another contract offer. The sticking point that's had them on the picket line for 7 weeks. And later on, Tropical Storm Rafael forms in the Caribbean, the potential path of what's expected to be the next hurricane of the season.
Plus, could the gender gap decide this presidential election? Why experts say the answer isn't as simple as yes or no.
You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
So we look at the margins. I think it's not just gender, it's not just race and ethnicity, but religion comes into that as well.
Just hours till Election Day, and the race is deadlocked. The different demographics, experts say, could decide the presidency. Plus, voters say the economy is their top issue, the impact each candidate's economic plan could have on your wallet.
Every time the wind blows, we get nervous.
A wind-driven fire explodes in size. Evacuation orders now in place in parts of Texas as some stand to lose everything. Live from the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, good evening and thank you for joining us on a very busy night. I'm Dee Gatton. Right now, presidential hopefuls making their final pitches to voters. Our team coverage continues with Ryan Smith, who's tracking the extra security measures states are taking now to make sure the voting process is safe and secure. Kayla Gaskins and Atra El-Nashar are following the candidates as they wrap up their campaigns tonight. And Jeff Harris breaks down the impact the gender gap could have on deciding who wins the White House. But first, let's go to Ryan at the live desk. And what are some of the steps being taken to keep people safe?
Well, Didi, here we just are a few hours away from the first votes cast on this election day tomorrow. And officials in those key swing states and much beyond are prioritizing election safety unlike ever before. Brand new video here taking us inside the FBI's new election command post, now operating and running 24/7 in Washington, D.C. That's where those agents will monitor and respond to any threats that pop up, all in coordination, of course, with local and state law enforcement.
Criminal threats, such as threats to election workers, foreign malign influence, cyber threats, and acts of domestic violence.
Now check this out here. Some businesses in downtown Washington, D.C. now preparing for a worst case scenario. Many, as you see here, boarding up their doors and windows. Those owners worried about any civil unrest or violence that could possibly hit this week. The governors, meantime, in Washington State, Oregon, and Nevada, all activating members of the National Guard as a precaution. Right now, at least 18 states and Washington, D.C. have those troops either activated or on standby. Let's take you out south to Arizona, Maricopa County, where Phoenix is, now offering this multi-camera live stream inside its voting tabulation center. The county spending millions of dollars leading up to this election cycle, improving security on site there after those violent protests 4 years ago. One official now likens the property to a fortress.
Vice President Kamala Harris spending her hours of campaigning all over battleground state Pennsylvania, which both parties view as a must-win swing state. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports on Harris's message to voters in the final hours before Election Day.
Vice President Harris wrapping up what's been a remarkably short campaign with a sprint to the finish line. On Monday, going all in on Pennsylvania and its 19 electoral votes that could put her in the Oval Office. Appearing at events and rallies in Scranton, Allentown, Pittsburgh, where former President Trump also stopped Monday, ending the night in Philadelphia. I'll fight. In the final ad of her campaign, titled Brighter Future, Harris touches on the kitchen table issues polls show are top priorities for voters and calls for unity.
And I pledge to be a president for all Americans. Now I'm asking for your vote, because as president, I will get up every day and fight for the American people.
Harris mentioning her opponent less and less. During a rally in East Lansing, Michigan Sunday, she didn't once say Trump's name.
We have momentum. It is on our side. Can you feel it?
Running mate Tim Walz and his wife Gwen spending Monday campaigning across Wisconsin and Michigan, part of the so-called blue wall that's been key to Democrats' past presidential wins.
The thing is upon us now, folks. I know there's a lot of anxiety, but the decisions that are made over the next 24, 36 hours when those polls close will shape not just the next 4 years, they will shape the coming generations.
Big name surrogates covering ground in other swing states Monday, like in North Carolina, First Lady Jill Biden and Governor Roy Cooper appearing at Get Out the Vote events across the state they hope to flip blue for the first time since 2008. Notably absent from the campaign trail, President Biden. The campaign is embracing the star power of A-list celebrities appearing at their final events, from Katy Perry to John Bon Jovi, Christina Aguilera, Sugarland, 2 Chainz, Robert De Niro, and more. On election night, Vice President Harris will be here in D.C. at her alma mater, Howard University.
And we know you will be covering that for us. Atra, the work won't end tonight. What do we know about what the Harris campaign's efforts tomorrow will look like?
Well, we know Governor Walz will attend a campaign event in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, before he and his family make their way here to D.C. to join the vice president at Howard. And for folks watching at home, don't be surprised if you keep getting campaign calls, texts, emails throughout the day reminding you to vote. Tomorrow morning, Harris's supporters are kicking off what they're billing as the largest ever phone bank event, featuring celebrities like Ben Stiller, Jessica Alba, John Legend, Mark Cuban, and a whole lot more.
Yeah, those texts and calls are definitely something that you can count on. Pentagon. Acha Al-Nashar reporting tonight from the Capitol. We'll see you tomorrow. And we continue our election team coverage now with national correspondent Kayla Gaskins. She joins us from Palm Beach, Florida, where Donald Trump is doing his final campaigning.
We're just outside Mar-a-Lago, where security is extra tight after 2 assassination attempts. Melania and Barron Trump reportedly arrived in Florida on Sunday ahead of the election, while Donald Trump crisscrosses crucial battleground states in a final campaign blitz. Monday marking the final full day of campaigning for this election. Donald Trump starting off the day in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Hello, beautiful, beautiful North Carolina.
Followed by 2 stops in Pennsylvania, Reading and Pittsburgh, where Kamala Harris is also campaigning Monday. Capping off the day in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the same place he held final events in 2016 and 2020. Continuing efforts to convince Americans he's the one that can fix top issues for voters, such as the border and the economy.
Are you better off now than you were 4 years ago?
Aside from rallies and battlegrounds, Trump also making stops in places like Virginia that are expected to go blue, an apparent effort to help down-ballot Republicans and shine light on places that might be more competitive than most think. In these final rallies, Trump keeping up attacks on his opponent.
She's a radical left Marxist, and if she ever heads this country is finished.
Raising questions about the validity of the voting system.
2,600 ballots, all done by the same hand. In other words, the same exact penmanship.
And slamming the media.
But all we have really over here is the fake news, right? To get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news.
Recent polling shows Trump and Harris tied in crucial battleground states. More than 76 million Americans have already voted. Trump, though, is waiting to cast his ballot on Election Day. Donald Trump is expected to watch the election results at his Mar-a-Lago home before heading to the Palm Beach Convention Center, where the official watch party will be taking place. In Palm Beach, Florida, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
And we continue our coverage with will the gender gap decide the 2024 election? In a race that's already razor thin, Harris has an 11-point advantage among women, while Trump has a 5-point advantage among men. That's according to a new ABC Ipsos poll. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, joins us right now. Jeff, while that 16-point gender gap is important to keep an eye on, experts tell you there's something else to watch. What is it?
Gender really is a big factor, Didi, but they also say race, ethnicity, and religion need to be taken into consideration now just hours away from Election Day. The current 16-point gender gap historically is on par with what we've seen in the past, averaging 19 points in a presidential exit poll or in polls since 1996. But some believe it could reach new levels this year, despite efforts from both camps to appeal to the opposite gender. However, along with gender, experts I spoke with say because this race is so close, other groups will be crucial in deciding a winner.
So we look at the margins. I think it's not just gender, it's not just race and ethnicity, but religion. It comes into that as well.
You have people being more proactive right now. So this is going to be a nail biter all the way down to the finish.
A 538 analysis of national polling in October found that the average gender gap was actually slightly wider than the ABC Ipsos poll. 10 points for Harris among women and 9 points for Trump among men. According to Florida's election lab, women are outpacing men in early vote turnout as well, with data showing 54 to 43.6% as of Sunday.
Yep, will be a big factor to watch tomorrow as well. Don't miss our special election coverage starting at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. We are covering all the big races, including in swing states like Michigan, as well as hot button issues that matter to you, both on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. The Pentagon now saying it cannot confirm reports that North Korean troops have been observed in combat in Ukraine. Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder says U.S. officials believe the total number of North Korean forces in Russia could be close to around 11 or 12,000. At least 10,000 are believed to be in the Kursk border region.
Recognizing that as we continue to assess DPRK presence on the ground, those numbers could go up slightly in terms of the total number of DPRK troops in Russia. We've seen the press reports about alleged combat ops. We're looking into those, but at this point cannot corroborate those reports.
Ryder says all indications are that the North Korean troops will serve in some kind of combat or combat support capability, but it remains to be seen exactly how they'll be deployed. Israeli authorities are investigating leaks of classified information possibly involving one of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's media advisors. The documents allegedly help support Netanyahu's case for adding tough new conditions for a ceasefire deal in Gaza over the summer. An Israeli court loosened a gag order yesterday, releasing the name of the central suspect in the case as Eli Feldstein, the prime minister's spokesperson. Netanyahu denies any wrongdoing and says Feldstein was never qualified to receive classified information. New tonight, the remains of the 2 U.S. Navy aviators who died in a helicopter crash in Washington state last month are being returned to their families this week. Lieutenant Commander Lindsay Evans and Lieutenant Serena Wildman were killed during a routine training flight near Mount Rainier on October 15th. The two were both 31 years old and from California. They recently returned to the U.S. after a 9-month deployment.
Well, could it be third time's the charm? 32,000 Boeing machinists now voting today on a third contract offer from the company. In fact, the poll's closing in about 20 minutes or so out in the Pacific Northwest. This time, the deal is supported by those union leaders. The proposal here includes a 38% raise over the next 4 years. Now, that's up from the 35% increase that those very same workers rejected just 2 weeks ago, plus productivity bonuses for employees. Boeing, however, is not willing to restore a pension plan that was frozen nearly a decade ago. Now, the strike has lasted more than 7 weeks now and virtually shut down all production of Boeing passenger planes. Now, if approved, union members would return to work sometime early next week. Boeing saying the average pay for those striking workers would jump from $75,000 a year to about $119,000 over the next 4 years under this new offer.
A labor strike shut down key ports on Canada's west coast today. The Greater Vancouver Board of Trade says $800 million in trade flows through the area every single day. And about 20% of U.S. trade arrives in Vancouver and Prince Rupert. In the summer of last year, strikes at the 2 west coast ports lasted for nearly 2 weeks and impacted U.S.-bound delivery of items for months. Coming up next, wanting to vote tomorrow but still not registered. The state's offering same-day registration on Election Day.
Plus, containing a rapidly growing Texas wildfire tonight, the added resources deployed and evacuation orders in place here outside of Austin, Texas. But first, brand new video to show you here. This is the moment someone drove up to a ballot box in Washington state last week, starts a fire, then the ballot box there explodes. Boom, you just saw it. This happened last week in Vancouver, a few miles north of Portland, Oregon. Nearly all of the ballots there were destroyed. Now, a similar fire happening on the exact same day at a drop box in Portland, but most of those ballots were okay. Authorities believe the same person is to blame. Firefighters are working around the clock tonight, battling this growing wildfire you see right here. This is happening just outside of Austin, Texas. Hundreds of acres have been burned so far. Several residents, in fact, had to evacuate. The governor tonight announcing that more wildfire resources are being sent to Bastrop County in response. And the good news here is those additional crews are making a quick impact. The Hudson Fire, as it's being called, is now at 50% containment. It started yesterday near the town of Smithville, and with just a few dozen acres burning, well, then that quickly spread to more than 400 acres as of today.
If we need to pack, if we need to evacuate, my neighbor called me and she said that she's getting text that she needs to evacuate.
Now, a local rec center now acting as a temporary shelter for those local residents. The governor issuing a disaster declaration for more than 100 counties recently due to ongoing wildfire dangers.
The economy has been and continues to be the top issue for voters by a landslide throughout this presidential election. But will whoever win really have much of an impact on Americans' personal finances? Emma from the Fact Check team joins us now to explain what finance experts are saying. People care because this is their money.
Yeah, and it's the top issue. It's been the top issue this entire election season. So Dave Ramsey, he's a personal finance expert, also a radio host. He said he doesn't think the outcome of the election is going to have any real impact on Americans' personal finances. As far as his take on Harris and Trump, he said both of them are fiscally irresponsible and neither of them have proposed solutions to turn this deficit around, which I thought was interesting.
It certainly is. And looking at these candidates' economic plans on a macro level, what do economists think about them?
They have different takes on different plans. So a survey of professional economists by the National Association for Business Economics in August, that showed that Trump's proposal to raise tariffs on imports got some bad reviews from these economists. They thought that businesses are just going to be passing on these increased costs to consumers. And then as far as Harris's plan goes, many economists were highly critical of her proposal to ban price gouging and put price controls in place. Economist Carl Schramm, a professor at Syracuse, he told Investopedia that this was her worst idea, and he compared it to Richard Nixon's price controls that were back in the early 70s, which we all know from the history books definitely backfired.
So it sounds like these group of experts giving them a thumbs down for both candidates.
Of them, yeah.
Really. All right, Emma, thank you. For more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com.
Buckle up. We are tracking the 17th named storm this hurricane season, now rapidly gaining strength. What we now know about Rafael's projected path and who it could impact the most here at home. That's next, right here at the Live Desk.
But first, a live look over Austin from our station KI, part of our network of 4,000 local journalists. Cap Metro will offer free rides across its transit network on Election Day to help voters reach polling places. The fare suspension applies to Cap Metro buses, trains, and bikes. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Tonight we are keeping a close eye on Tropical Storm Rafael, now forecast to morph into a hurricane as early as tomorrow. You can see on our live desk radar a tropical storm watch now in place for the lower and middle Florida Keys. And as for the dry Tortuga area, parts of Florida and nearby areas of the southeast could see heavy rainfall by mid to late week. As of this hour tonight, forecasters say it's still too early to make any predictions about impacts for the Gulf Coast area. Hurricane warning has already been issued for the Cayman Islands. Rafael is the 17th named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season and will be the 11th hurricane if it continues to strengthen. Now, on average, to give you some perspective here, the Atlantic hurricane season has around 14 named storms.
Right now, both campaigns are still pushing to get voters to the polls, and there is still a chance to register, depending on where you live. In some states, voters can register and vote on the same day. Take a look at this map from Axios right there. We're going to pull it up using data from the National Conference of State Legislatures. The states in orange you see there, they allow same-day voter registration up to and or on Election Day.
Well, we just moved out from out of state, and it was just really important to me and my husband to come and take care of it.
The registration took like 1-2 minutes, not too bad.
In most other states, voters must register by given deadline, usually between 8 and 30 days before the election.
High prices to stubborn mortgage rates, scores of first-time homebuyers still stuck on the sidelines. The financial help a growing number are now turning to. I'll tell you what it is in the next 90 seconds. Here at the Live Desk tonight, we are tracking the many hurdles to American home buying. In fact, the average age of the American home buyer now at an all-time high at 56 years old. And if you look back in the not too distant past, back in 2010, the average age was 39 years old. This according to a new report just out by the National Association of Realtors. Now, when it comes to first-time home buyers, now they only make about a quarter of the market share, right here around 24%. And that is the lowest since the association started tracking that data back in the early 1980s. Now, in 2007, first-time home buyers made up about 40% of that market share. Another number that underscores the challenge here, 1 out of 4 first-time home buyers relied on a gift or loan from a relative or friend to help finance. And a record high 7% now using their inheritance to afford that first down payment. The median household income for first-time home buyers now $97,000.
Ahead in our next hour, cyber criminals targeting kids more than ever. What parents should know to help protect children from becoming future victims. Plus,
get ready for another round of rate cuts. How much is getting slashed and why the next president could be a factor.
those stories and much more coming up. But first, here's a look at America's news and weather now where you live.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. We have some warm temperatures moving into the Northeast on Tuesday. Our election day looks great. Temps will be in the 60s and 70s with developing sun. We have a little front moving through overnight with around, or at least a chance for a round of showers. This is about 8 o'clock in the morning. Clouds will start to break up. Look at all the sun during the afternoon. Another front moves through on Wednesday. There is a chance for a shower that day, but it stays mild and a little windy with highs in the 70s. Enjoy.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region staying dry through your Monday night into Election Day. Looks like we'll start out with some clouds in the morning, but otherwise not expecting any rainfall. There is a front approaching as we make our way closer to Wednesday, but it's likely not to cross the region until Wednesday night into Thursday, where we could see a shower or two. Temperatures will be warming up. Your Tuesday, 70s likely for everyone. We'll be adding to that for your Wednesday.
Good evening, I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. We are tracking isolated showers across most of the southeast with the exception of the western portion of the area, which we are tracking a frontal boundary combined with a squall line formation of showers and storms. We're expected to see some upscale development of these storms Tuesday in the later afternoon and evening, so expect severe weather, very active weather throughout the day Tuesday. Here's a look at your overnight lows, 50s, 60s, upper 70s.
I'm meteorologist Marshall McPeak. For Election Day, we're monitoring a couple of areas, especially in a couple of swing states, that may have strong to severe thunderstorms. So parts of Wisconsin over into a little bit of Michigan, including the UP, may have some strong to severe storms, but rain from St. Louis all the way up into Milwaukee and Grand Rapids. Sunshine for Cincinnati and Lexington.
Good evening, I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. We're watching some cooler, drier air up north. That's behind a cold front that's going to come pushing through the region. Could be some big showers, thunderstorms, all the way from Arkansas down into South Texas in the overnight hours. Some areas could get some damaging winds and some locally heavy rain. Temperatures will be on the cool down right after that. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Hi, I'm George Waldenberger with your forecast for the western United States. How do you like Southern California, Las Vegas, Phoenix in the 70s, but maybe you like it colder? That's where Jackson, Missoula, Salt Lake City in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. Even some mountain snow with a weather maker moving across the very high plains and across Canada. On the backside, ridging and quieter weather moving into the Pacific Northwest. That's the scene from out here.
You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Tomorrow you have to stand up and tell Kamala that you've had enough. You can't take anymore.
In one of the
most consequential elections of our lifetime, and we have momentum. It is on our side. Can you feel it?
Final push. Harris and Trump campaigned to the last minute with Election Day now just hours away. Both candidates' last plea for your vote.
The fact that we woke up is a miracle.
Powerful tornado